is our sixth webinar in a series that we started a few months ago called Be Foodwize. And like every time, we have an important topic for today as well, which is the dietary guidelines for Indians, for people from India, as they have been developed and prescribed by the National Institute of Nutrition in Hyderabad. And I'm going to start by saying that, when we announced this topic a few weeks ago, one of our good friends reached out to me on WhatsApp and said, haven't you chosen a bad time of the year to do this topic? Because this is a really big festival weekend. I mean, it is, of course, Navratri. And for those of you who are celebrating Durga Puja, it's Mahasaptami. And of course, we sort of, will go into Diwali and a time of the year when there's much festivity, accompanied, of course, by much eating and feasting. And, and I said to her that, if anything, festival time is perhaps an excellent time for us to be talking about dietary guidelines so that, we can all be just more intelligent about how to eat enjoyably, but also in a responsible way. But on a more serious note, diet and sort of deciding what's good for me to eat or what's not good for me to eat has become a topic of great prominence for the last few years, as many more of us think about health, we think about fitness, and hence, of course, we think about food. And so many people in urban cities, in particular, all around the world, are looking at various sources of information for what's a good diet for ourselves, what's a good diet for my family, for children, for those of you that are bringing up young families. And there is a lot of information, particularly if you're looking at the internet, there's a lot of information about what not to eat, about what you must only eat, and so on and so forth. And if we look at, international literature, often you will find there's references to diets from all over the world that are recommended, for instance, as, the best diets to be had. And one of the diets that shows up very frequently and all the time is the Mediterranean diet. I mean, you've probably heard or seen that the Mediterranean diet is absolutely the best. And we often say when we're talking to groups of people that it is the best diet if you live in the Mediterranean and if you are in the Mediterranean, because food at the end of the day is a manifestation of the terrain, of the ecology, of the cultures as well of a place. And so we thought that it was really important for us to understand the dietary guidelines for Indians. And to teach us today, we have Dr. Prachi Shukla. I'm going to introduce her briefly. Dr. Shukla is Associate Professor at the Lady Irwin College of Food and Nutrition at the University of Delhi. And amongst her areas of research, in particular, she has researched non-communicable diseases, which, as many of you will know, include lifestyle diseases emerging from diet, amongst other things, and interventional strategies for health, for development, among adolescents. That might be, even though our focus today is not just adolescents, but we know from previous sessions that for some of you, how to make sure that a young family is eating well is an important topic. I'm going to turn over to Dr. Shukla. When we first spoke many weeks ago, she did caution me that when she's teaching this topic in the college to her students, it's many lectures of several hours. So we are trying to cover an important and a complex topic here as best as we can in the time we have. So I'll turn over to her without further ado. Thank you, Dr. Shukla, for doing this.
Thanks a lot for this introduction, Ms. Priya. I hope I am able to do some justice, and there are certain takeaway messages from today's lecture. So we have all us are actually hearing a lot about Mediterranean diet, but hardly only few of us know that these are basically inspired from the traditional Indian concept of diet. So through this dietary guidelines, I will be basically keeping you aware on what are the general do's and don'ts that one need to actually follow to remain healthy, fit, and fine. So with this, I'll start with the presentation. Okay. So in today's talk, I will be basically talking about dietary guidelines, and all of us should be very clear that these guidelines are basically meant for Indian population. So we don't have to go by what Mediterranean diet is saying or what other popular diets are actually saying. Before talking, you should know why is there a need for these dietary guidelines. So there is drastic changes in the lifestyle, our working schedules, and so we hardly have any time throughout the day for cooking traditional elaborate meals. And so most of us end up consuming a modern diet where most of the foods are processed foods, either fully processed or partially processed, which are ready to serve and ready to eat food. But the major limitation with these kinds of food is they are actually increasing the risk for various non-communicable diseases. When I'm saying non-communicable diseases, I basically mean all these lifestyle-related disorders, which are very common these days, whether there is obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, cancer. So these diseases are basically emerging as a public health concern worldwide. So we should really follow a diet so that this can be prevented. And so dietary guidelines are needed to promote adequate diet, which is nutritionally adequate. And so we develop a healthy lifestyle. Also, the dietary guideline basically focuses on each and every age group. So there may be certain points which may be appropriate for a pregnant lady, a lactating mother, for infants, for elderly population. And then along with that, there are certain guidelines which basically focus on most people, because all of us want to be healthy at the end of the day. The dietary guidelines basically are 15 in number, and these 15 guidelines are based upon 6 broad goals. The first goal basically talks about maintaining ideal body weight. So calculation of ideal body weight is actually little tricky here, but the simplest method to calculate ideal body weight is your height in centimeters minus 100 will give you approximate idea about your ideal body weight. So suppose if your height is 157 centimeters, then just subtract 100 from it and 57 will be your ideal body weight. So this is the most simplest method for calculating IBW. Other than that, India is a country where we see a double burden of malnutrition. So double burden basically means on one side we see a lot of nutritional deficiencies where people are deficient in iron, calcium. India may we have plenty amount of sunshine, but then too we often see people deficient in vitamin D. So on one side there is deficiency of nutrients. On other side there is excessive new food available, which is leading to various lifestyle disorders like obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease. Then the other goals of dietary guideline basically focus on each and every age group. So we start with the adequate nutritional status during pregnancy and lactation, because if mother is not healthy, definitely she will not deliver a healthy baby, and so the baby is likely to develop various nutritional concerns later on when he or she grows up. Then growth of infant, children, and adolescent is equally important because they are our future. And at the same time, we cannot leave our elderly population because we want them to have increasing life expectancy. And as long as they are alive, they should be healthy, fit, and fine without any diseases. The first dietary guideline basically talks about eating a variety of foods to ensure a balanced diet. Now, what does this balanced diet mean? There are some 7, 8 food groups which need to be included on daily basis. Be it your cereals and millets, pulses and legumes, milk and milk products, meat and meat products, vegetables, fruits, fat, nuts, oil seeds, and sugar. So when I'm saying vegetables here, basically this does not limit to potato, tomato, and onion. There are plenty amount of other vegetables which need to be included in the diet. So National Institute of Nutrition basically proposed the concept of my plate for the day, and the image here shows plate for one day. Half of the plate basically should have fruits and vegetable. So approximately 400 grams of vegetables need to be consumed throughout the day, and 100 to 150 grams of fruit. So for a lay person, if you need to understand how much is 100 grams or 150 grams, so one fruit of medium size, be it one medium size apple, one medium size orange, medium banana, will be approximately 100 grams. Then one fourth of the plate should include your cereals, and here by cereals I mean the ones which have plenty amount of fiber content in it. So rather than taking refined cereals like oats, like upma, like poha, one need to have plenty amount of millets in the diet. One need to include whole cereals in the diet. Then throughout the day, at least 3 servings of pulses is needed for those who are vegetarian now. So 3 servings basically means approximately 3 katoris of dal per day, or 3 bowls of dal per day. Those who are non-vegetarian can replace maybe one bowl of dal with chicken or mutton or egg curry, whatever you may want. Then these days people know that nuts are a very healthier option, and so I think most people include nuts in the diet, but we are not sure how much of nuts to be included. So most people end up consuming 2 halves of walnut, maybe 2 to 3 almonds, and that's it. So the amount is not sufficient. At least 30 grams of nuts should be consumed throughout the day. Whenever you want to have a snack, please go for nuts, because definitely it is a healthier option as compared to your processed foods. Then fats and oils are the group which is actually unnecessarily restricted, especially by those who are more concerned about their health. So sometimes people unnecessarily avoid fats and oils because we have a fear of gaining weight. But definitely, even fats and oils are important for us, but it depends upon which fat and oil do we really consume, because that's the most important thing. Even ghee in some amount is not harmful because it is needed. So in our balanced diet, approximately 7% of calories can come from ghee. So limited intake of fats and oils is important, but you cannot actually totally remove this particular group. Of course, sugar can be eliminated because this particular group provides us only empty calories. So those who are more concerned about their health actually can then omit this group. Okay. Then milk and milk products. At least one serving of milk is very important throughout the day. So this one serving includes approximately 1 glass of milk. Other than this 1 glass of milk, you can include paneer, cheese, curd in your diet to fulfill your calcium requirement. The second guideline focuses on pregnancy and lactation. So during pregnancy, extra food and healthcare is needed for pregnant and lactating mother. Pregnancy is basically a physiologically demanding period, and when we look at the nutrient content, but although it will be very technical for you people, when we see the nutrient content or the nutrient requirement, we see that there is only slight change in the energy intake. But other than that, the quality of diet that one consumes during pregnancy is very important, because diet is slightly increased in terms of energy, approximately 350 calories are increased during pregnancy. But other than that, all the nutrients should be taken in excessive amount. So be it iron, be it folic acid, vitamin C, vitamin A, then all these micronutrients need to be consumed in adequate amount. And the other thing is, whenever you are taking iron in the diet, most of our iron actually is coming from any plant sources. And since most people are vegetarian, all those people who are calling themselves non-vegetarian are actually not consuming meat and fish and poultry that frequently. So, adequate intake of vitamin C is very important with iron-rich food. In winters, we eat plenty amount of green leafy vegetable parathas, bathua parathas, methi parathas, and then people include tea with it. The moment you include tea, most of the iron absorption is actually then inhibited. So, if you want to have green leafy vegetable parathas in your meal, it is advised that include a glass of lemon juice with it, so that absorption of iron is basically enhanced. Then periodic health checkups are very important for weight gain during pregnancy, so that one is able to monitor weight gain. Traditionally, there was a concept that during pregnancy, a pregnant lady should gain approximately 12 to 15 kgs of weight. But now, most of the people actually have a complicated pregnancy with so many concerns. So, in the present situation, the weight gain during pregnancy actually depends upon the pre-pregnancy BMI. So anybody who has a body mass index less than 18.5 is considered underweight, and so underweight person can gain approximately 12.5 to 18 kgs weight during pregnancy. However, if one is healthy, having normal BMI 18.5 to 24.9, approximately 11 to 16 kgs of weight can be gained. But somebody who is obese with a BMI more than 30, then only 5 to 9 kgs of weight gain should be advised. The moment one gains excessive weight, obviously it will lead to a complicated pregnancy with the gestational diabetes and large weight babies. During pregnancy, tetanus toxoid immunization is very important. There are two injections which need to be given to the pregnant lady. And then during pregnancy, physical exercise is another important component. It is advised that every pregnant lady should at least do 45 minutes of physical activity, and this may include walking post meals. Since pregnant lady gets tired easily throughout the day, so adequate rest for 2 to 3 hours at least during the day is important, and she should consume supplementation as advised by the physician, because during pregnancy iron and folic acid supplements are generally recommended. So one need to regularly consume that. Folic acid is especially very important during first trimester of pregnancy, where the organ development is actually occurring. Like pregnancy, a lactating mother also requires extra food so that she is able to produce adequate amount of milk. There are certain nutrients which are basically given to the baby through breast milk at the cost of mother's health. So calcium is one such nutrient. If a lactating mother is not taking adequate amount of calcium in her diet, then the calcium is continuously released from the bones and to make up for the losses in breast milk. So there will not be a change in the breast milk composition, but there will be continuous loss of calcium from the bones, and that is why these bone deformities are very common in females as compared to males. So osteoporosis and all we generally see in females most commonly. So if the diet is adequate, then only mother will be able to give adequate nourishment to the baby. So other than that, a lactating mother should also include plenty amount of fluids in her diet so that breast milk secretion is appropriate. A healthy mother generally produces approximately 850 ml of milk per day. If the mother is malnourished, definitely there will not be a change in the composition of the milk, but the quantity of the milk is drastically reduced. So maybe from 850 ml, it may go down to approximately 400 or 450 ml. And so a child who is being fed on only 400 ml milk will be definitely malnourished. The third guideline focuses on infancy. Exclusive breastfeeding should be continued for 6 months and encourage breastfeeding till the child is 2 years or more. So people generally have too many myths regarding breastfeeding concept, and so the first milk which is produced after the birth of the baby, which is known as yellow milk or colostrum, should definitely be given to the child. This colostrum is generally considered as a dirty milk, yellow milk, which has been stored in the breast for 9 months period. But it is not so. Breast produces milk only after the birth of the baby. So there is no concept of dirty milk stored in the breast. Colostrum is very important for a newborn child because it has plenty amount of antibodies in it, which protects infant against the various infections. So start with colostrum feeding, and for first 2 to 3 days, generally this thick yellowish fluid is secreted, which is known as colostrum. It is very important that every child is fed colostrum. Then regarding the time when breastfeeding should be continued, so it is very important that early initiation of breastfeeding should be done within 1 hour of birth of the child. And for first 6 months, one need to follow exclusive breastfeeding. So when I'm saying exclusive breastfeeding, I mean that nothing other than breast milk should be given to the child. So no guttis, uh, no additional fluid is needed for the child. It is only mother's milk which will fulfill the nutrient requirement during the first 6 months of life. So exclusive breastfeeding means only mother's milk is given to the child and nothing beyond that. Even in hot summer month, you don't have to provide additional water to the baby. After 6 months, mother's milk is not able to fulfill all the nutrient requirements of the child. So definitely we need to introduce age appropriate complementary feeding, or we call this complementary feeding as Purak Ahar in Hindi. So this complementary feeding should be started at 6 months of after the birth of the child. And traditionally also, all of you might be familiar that we do annaprashan. So annaprashan is basically introducing solid food in the diet of the infant. Even if you introduce solid foods, it is important that breastfeeding can be continued up to 2 years of age and even beyond, as long as mother is willing to complement to breastfeed the child, because definitely breastfeeding will add to the nutrient intake of the child. So the three most important points here are early initiation, exclusive breastfeeding, and continued breastfeeding up to 2 years of age. Guideline number 4 talks about complementary feeding. So again, in India, there are lot of myths which are floating around complementary feeding. People generally think that it is dal water and rice water which needs to be given to the child. And in the end, under 5 malnutrition is a common concern in India, because people actually don't know that what is the right kind of complementary feeding that needs to be given to the child. So after 6 months, when we start with complementary feeding, it has to be age appropriate complementary feeding. So initially you may start with the liquids, then go to semi-solid consistency, and finally by the time a child is 1 year old, you can give all the solid foods to the child, whatever an adult person is eating, but definitely the quantity will be comparatively lesser as compared to a adult person. So suppose an adult is consuming 2 chapatis, a 1 year old child can actually take 1/4 of chapati. Obviously, you need to just tear it into small pieces, mash it with dal, and then give it to the child. So a 6 to 8 month child can actually consume half a bowl of khichdi twice a day. So the ideal meal for a 6 month child will be cereal, pulse, and vegetable combination. The recipe may look similar to what we call khichdi in traditional terms. Then for a 9 to 11-year-old child, we can include half a bowl at least 3 times a day. And in between meals, we should give him some healthy snacks. So these healthy snacks may include boiled egg, this may include dried papaya, this may include mango, mashed banana, even thick vegetable soups can be given to the children. In order to increase the energy density of these complementary feeding, sometimes it is advised that you can add at least half a teaspoon of oil or butter to the dish so that the increased energy requirements can be fulfilled. Then for a 12 to 23-year-old child, we may give full bowl of dish at least 3 times a day, and then nutritious food 1 to 2 times. So the traditional cereal, pulse, and vegetable combination dishes will not only take the requirement, will not even fulfill the requirement of energy, protein, but it will also give adequate amount of vitamins and minerals. So the diet should be diverse, where we include milk and milk products in the diet, egg, meat if one is a non-vegetarian, cereal and pulses, green leafy vegetables in plenty, and include some yellow and orange color fruits and vegetables in the diet. The ideal way of feeding complementary foods is using a bowl and a spoon, because bowl and a spoon can be thoroughly sterilized so that there are no chances of infection. If you introduce a food to the child and the child is not accepting the food, please never force feed the child, because then force feeding the child may develop dislike for a particular food. So the ideal way is just to avoid giving if the child is not liking, and try and reintroduce that food after some time, and let's hope that there is a acceptability for the food. Initially, always start with a small quantity, and then later on you can increase. And along with this age appropriate complementary feeding, it is important that mother continues breastfeeding up to 2 years of age. The next guideline focuses on ensuring adequate and appropriate diet for children and adolescents in both health and disease condition. So children and adolescence is the period of continuous growth and development. And it is very important that adequate intake of calcium should be done, which can only be obtained through milk and milk products. Because it is important that one develops peak bone mass during this period, and this peak bone mass will basically help in sustaining old age. At the same time, we should also make sure to develop healthy eating and physical activity among children. So playing the favorite sport at least 1 hour per day is important, and rather than spending too much of screen time, even parents can be involved in physical activity. They can have some outdoor activities so that parents motivate their kids to follow healthy lifestyle. The guideline number 6 talks about including micronutrient rich diets for elderly people so that they are fit and active. So once we look at the nutrient requirement for elderly patients or elderly people, we often see that the diet is restricted in terms of energy content. And the reason for this energy restriction is because they are no longer that physically active. So only slight energy needs to be reduced. Other than that, all the nutrients, be it protein, fats, vitamin, minerals, fiber, everything need to be consumed in adequate amount, because elderly is the period when people are suffering from various nutritional deficiencies. At the same time, adequate calcium, iron, zinc, vitamin A, and antioxidants is important, because we want to prevent age-related degenerative diseases among elderly. So in elderly, we see diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, cancer. In order to prevent these degenerative diseases, it is very important that we include adequate amount of vitamins and minerals in the diet. Other than this, there are certain general tips which need to be followed for good health. Exercising regularly. We cannot expect elderly people to go to gym and exercise. So even if they are able to do walk, which is of slow intensity, or they're able to do yoga, pranayam at home, I think that would fulfill their exercise and help them maintain their weight. Avoid smoking, chewing tobacco and tobacco products, and at the same time alcohol. Regular health checkups are very important, and elderly need to avoid self medications, and then focusing on stress management techniques like yoga and medicine and meditations, because this will help them in maintaining their weight as well. Guideline number 7 talks about adequate intake of fruits and vegetables. So already mentioned that throughout the day, people need to consume approximately 200 grams of green leafy vegetables, 200 grams other vegetables, and 100 grams of roots and tubers, which excludes potato. So generally people think that I am eating potato, so I am eating plenty amount of vegetable, but that's not so. Potato basically give us only calories, and so is hardly considered as a vegetable. Vegetables are low in energy, so especially those who want to lose weight actually need to include plenty amount of vegetables in their diet. But at the same time, they provide us plenty amount of vitamins and minerals which are needed for daily process of our body. Vegetables are also important that because they prevent age related damage, they protect our body from cataract, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and cancer. Somewhere the high fiber content of the vegetables is basically the reason behind all these factors. So remember to take your rainbow of vegetables on daily basis, and always pick up different vegetables from the pool, so that all your nutrient requirements, particularly iron, calcium, fiber, B vitamins, is fulfilled through this rainbow of vegetables. Guideline 8 focuses on fats and oils. So, the fat that we consume in our diet is a combination of visible fat and invisible fat. Visible fat is that fat which we use in cooking or at table. So, your butter, your deshi ghee, mustard oil, olive oil, rice bran oil is basically your visible fat which you use either during cooking or on the table. While invisible fat is that fat which is integral part of various food stuff. So all of you might be knowing that nuts have oil in it. We have seen cream in milk. So all that is invisible fat which is a part of most of the food stuff. And the fat that we take in our diet is basically the combination of these two. Now, ghee, butter, and vanaspati, these basically have saturated fats in them, and so this group is basically harmful for us because it increases the risk for heart disease, and so they are generally known as having bad cholesterol. While low fat milk and milk products, fish, chicken, and your nuts generally have good fats in it, and because they are rich in monounsaturated fatty acids and polyunsaturated fatty acids. Minimize consumption of ready to eat bakery products, processed food items, because most of these bakery food items generally have hydrogenated fat in them, which again increases the risk for heart diseases and cardiovascular diseases. As well as processed foods have plenty amount of saturated fats in them. Bakery foods may it is saturated fat which is used, so they may have ghee, butter, which adds to the saturated fatty acid, and so the risk for heart disease. It is very important that we avoid reheating of the oils, because once you repeatedly heat oil, then trans fat is produced, and this trans fat again increases the risk for heart diseases. So even if you want to eat a fried food, be it samosa, be it kachori, the best way is to make it at home and eat rather than buying it from outside, because definitely all these shops basically keep on reheating the oil. They will never throw the oil and keep on adding to the leftover oil, so which will add to a lot of trans fats in our diet. Whenever you are consuming fats and oils, make sure there is combination of fats and oils. So one dish can be prepared in mustard oil. For example, if you are eating dal, then you can have mustard oil as tadka in it, or maybe a paratha can be prepared with groundnut oil. Some other dish can be prepared in rice bran oil, so that the requirement of your monounsaturated fatty acids and polyunsaturated fatty acids is adequately met. So remember to use variety of oils in the diet. The next guideline focuses on obesity. So we should maintain our ideal body weight so that obesity can be prevented. Obesity is not a disease, but it is a risk factor for various diseases. So once we start gaining weight, automatically the risk for various diseases keeps on increasing. So whether it is heart disease, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, fatty liver, cancer, hypertension, joint pain, backache, all these problems start arising once we start gaining weight. So the simple tips to prevent this weight gain is, if you're not able to do anything, then just try and cut down on sugar content, restrict salt in your diet, restrict fried foods and high calorie foods, and refined foods. So these days people consider poha and upma is the as the healthier breakfast items, but poha and upma again is made up of refined cereals, so which hardly has any fiber content in it. The better would be to have paratha in your diet rather than consuming poha and upma, because is made from wheat flour, which has plenty amount of fibers in it. Then soft drinks, aerated drinks need to be restricted, and so is alcohol, because people generally take excess calories through alcohol. Eat complex carbohydrates in the diet. So complex carbohydrates include your wheat flour, includes dalia, includes atta. So rather than white bread or maida bread, one can consume atta bread. Another misconception which people generally have is brown bread. People consider brown bread as the healthier option, but brown bread also is a refined wheat flour bread, a maida bread, where brown color is basically added as an adulterative. But this brown bread does not have fiber content in it. On contrary, if you want to include bread in your breakfast, please have atta bread or multigrain bread rather than brown bread. Increase consumption of fruits and vegetables, legumes, whole grains and nuts, because fruits, vegetables, legumes and grains will take care of your fiber intake. Fibers give us a feeling of satiety, a feeling of fullness, so excess calorie intake can be restricted. Limiting fat intake and shifting from saturated fat to unsaturated fat. So rather than using ghee, butter in the diet, it is advised that we can include monounsaturated fatty acid rich oils and polyunsaturated fatty acid rich oils. So which includes mustard oil, olive oil, sesame, rice bran, soya bean, safflower oils, because these are generally rich in unsaturated fatty acid. Avoid trans fats in their diet. So vanaspati, bakery products and desserts include plenty amount of vanaspati. The common brand name is dalda, but they have plenty amount of trans fat, which increases the risk for heart diseases. Use low fat milk and meat products. So rather than mutton, chicken and fish can be consumed, and curd, paneer, cheese can be made at home from toned milk or skimmed milk. The last point on weight maintenance basically focuses on physical activity. So it is very important that obese or overweight person starts doing physical activity. Regarding the amount of physical activity, duration of physical activity, and the intensity, the next guideline will be basically focusing. So the next guideline mentions about physical activity, exercise regularly, and be physically active to maintain ideal body weight. So how much activity or how much exercise do I need to do? Moderate intensity activity, at least 150 minutes per week is important. So when you are hearing 150 minutes, you might be feeling it is actually too much. But on daily basis, if you are able to do at least 30 minutes of physical activity, then within 5 days you will be able to complete 150 minutes of activity. But when you are doing exercise for 5 days, you need not do it for 7 days and then just regret, okay, this week I was not able to do exercise for 7 days, I could do only for 4 days or 5 days. You should not regret. But once you are picking and choosing, just make sure there should be no 2 consecutive days without exercise. So there should be, and then for at least 2 days per week, we need to do muscle strengthening exercises. So this may include using dumbbells and all, or resistant bands and all, so that your muscle is built up. Regarding the intensity of exercise, so whenever you are doing, the intensity has to be either of moderate one or vigorous intensity activity. So moderate intensity activity includes walking or going for shopping or climbing stairs, while vigorous intensity activity includes playing your favorite sport, dancing, swimming. So even if you are able to do moderate intensity, I mean, that will take care of your weight. And if you control your diet, you will be able to manage your present weight. But the one that you have already accumulated in your body, you need to perform physical activity in order to burn the calories that you have already stored in the body. The next guideline talks about restricting salt intake to a minimum. So how much salt do we need to consume throughout the day? Less than 5 grams is what recommended. And if I talk in terms of layman language, approximately 1 teaspoon of salt is 5 grams. So restricting salt is very important. We need to develop taste for low salt content in the diet. So immediately start reducing slight salt, so that automatically you are able to adapt to that change. Then there are various hidden sources of sodium in our diet, like traditional Indian meal accompaniments, which most of us are actually fond of eating: papad, chutneys, achar, ketchup. All these have salt as a preservative, so which contributes to excess salt intake. At the same time, all processed foods have like salted nuts, chips, fried namkeens have plenty amount of sodium in it, which contributes to excess salt intake and so excess hypertension. It is advised that one needs to consume fortified salt, the one that is fortified with iodine. And these days in market, we also come across double fortified salt, so which has both iron and iodine added as fortificant. In order to develop low salt, it is advised that if you are consuming salads, then avoid having adding salt to it, and you can just add lemon juice to it, so that you don't feel blandness. The next guideline focuses on safe and clean food. So the first point here is always wash your hands properly using soap, hand wash, and water before handling food. The next point focuses on separating raw foods and cooked foods, and even the processed foods. So suppose you are making vegetable sandwich, then you may use separate chopping board for your raw vegetables, and paneer can be kept separately. Don't try and mix the two. So raw and cooked should be kept separately, so that there is no cross contamination while you are cooking the food. All the food should be cooked thoroughly to a temperature more than 70 degrees centigrade. And once you cook the food, it should not be stored at room temperature for more than 2 hours. So that is why it is advised that the moment you cook food, let it cool, and within 2 hours it should be refrigerated and kept in refrigerator till you are eating it, because the temperature between 5 degrees to 60 degrees is basically the danger zone, where maximum microbial development can occur in the food. Even when you have to reheat the food, please reheat to a temperature so that it crosses more than 70 degrees centigrade, and immediately consume once the food is reheated. The next point basically mentions use of safe water and raw material, because sometimes if the water is contaminated, if the raw material has microbial growth, automatically the cooked food will also have infection. The next guideline focuses on adopting the right pre-cooking process and appropriate cooking methods. So soaking, germination, fermentation, all grinding, peeling, all this includes pre-preparation. before the actual cooking process takes place. So whenever you are washing cereals and pulses, because all these dals and rice need to be washed thoroughly before cooking, please do it as quickly as possible and using minimum amount of water, because if you wash for prolonged time, definitely most of the water soluble nutrients like thiamine, riboflavin will leach out into the water and will be just wasted. So all the washing should be done very quickly. The second important point regarding vegetables is, in winters we see have plenty amount of green leafy vegetables, and people generally first chop all the green vegetables and then they wash it. So again, this is not an ideal practice, because once you cut vegetables, there will be larger surface area, and so washing will lead to excessive leaching out of the water soluble nutrients. So all the green leafy vegetables should be first cleaned thoroughly, then they should be washed, and after washing, cutting should be done, so that we are able to retain nutrients to maximum. When you are peeling vegetables, make sure that the peel is as thin as possible, because definitely the layer below the peel has plenty amount of nutrients. So thicker peels will lead to loss of nutrients. The other option can be, we can even pressure cook vegetables before peeling, so that we are able to take out thin peels. Avoid soaking cut vegetables in water for longer time, because again, uh, longer exposure in water will lead to loss of water soluble nutrients. Use only sufficient amount of water for cooking. So suppose you are boiling potatoes, please wash potatoes very thoroughly, so that there is no traces of mud and all in the boiling water, and that same water can be used for kneading the dough, because any nutrient that is leached out in the water during boiling process can actually be conserved then. Cooking should be done by covering the vessels with a lid, because that way we are able to again retain the nutrients. And it is pressure cooking, steaming, which is preferred method compared to frying. uh, Cereals and pulses have plenty amount of nutrients in it, but most of the nutrients are basically present in the bound form. So the moment you sprout your pulses, the moment you ferment cereals and pulses for making South Indian dishes, the nutrient availability is drastically increased. So pulses generally do not have vitamin C in it, but once you sprout pulses, the vitamin C content becomes equivalent to that of your fruits. The exact reason behind this is not clear, but sprouting basically leads to development of vitamin C content, and vitamin C is very important nutrient because of its antioxidant properties, because it protects our body from the daily wear and tear and free radical damage. Generally, when we cook pulses, whole pulses, be it rajma, chole, chana, people are in the habit of adding baking soda to the dishes. Please soak these whole pulses overnight, and once you boil them, avoid using baking soda, because baking soda leads to loss of B vitamins like thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, folic acid. So always cook veg pulses without adding soda. The next guideline basically then talks about restricting uh, including adequate amount of fluids in the diet. So all of us know that a normal healthy person should consume at least 8 glasses of water per day, which approximately is 2 liters. Consuming milk and milk products is very important, because it will take care of the calcium requirement. There is no other food group which will give you plenty amount of calcium as milk and milk products. So at least 1 glass of milk per day, which is approximately 250 ml, is recommended on daily basis. Other than that, we need to include other nutritious beverages like buttermilk, coconut water, lemon water, even lassi can be consumed, rather than including aerated drinks and uh, alcohol in the diet. Those who are in the habit of consuming alcohol should actually have it in a limited amount. So by limited amount, I mean males can consume 2 pegs of alcohol on daily basis, while for females it is just 1 peg which is advised. And tea and coffee should be consumed in moderation, so not more than 2 cups per day is what is recommended. And all these drinks actually have plenty amount of sugar in it. So just look at the image, Coca-Cola, Nestle, they are actually having plenty amount of sugar. So it is better to avoid these drinks. The next guideline and the last one basically talks about restricting intake of processed foods, because these processed foods are rich in salt, sugar, and fat. Now we need to know what are these processed foods. So with the advancement in food technology industry, every day we see in market a new set of processed foods. These processed foods are available actually in ready to cook or ready to eat form, but and the examples are dehydrated foods that are available ready to eat, vegetables ready to eat, paneer preparations, uh, processed meat products, pasta products, canned juices, confectionery items, all these bakery items, and your breakfast cereals. All these processed foods basically have very high amount of energy in them, because they have high fat and high sugar in them. At the same time, these processed foods are also high in salt content. So one ends up consuming excess calories and a diet that is deficient in most of the vitamin, minerals, and fiber. So processed food items need to be restricted. It is advised that consume home cooked meals so that you get maximum nourishment. And this is the last part of the presentation. I would like to request Priya now to just play with the video. And this
I'll,
video is going to give a very important message on salt, sugar, and fat intake.
yes, I'll do that, Dr. Shukla.
आपकी जिंदगी में कौन जीतता है, दिल या दिमाग? जैसे दिमाग तो कहता है सुबह सुबह उठ के कसरत करो, पर दिल करता है थोड़ा और सो लो। या अभी दिमाग समझा रहा है घी तेल कम खाओ, तंदुरुस्त रहोगे, पर दिल ललचा रहा है अंकल जी रोज पराठे दबाते हैं, कुछ नहीं हुआ। दिमाग बनाता है कल को ऐसी बीमारियां हो गई कुछ खा ही ना पाओ तो क्या फायदा, इसलिए आधे लड्डू से काम चलाओ। पर दिल जिद करता है खाऊंगा तो पूरा ही। देखिए जानते तो सभी हैं कि ज्यादा तेल, चीनी या नमक खाना नुकसानदायक होता है, पर कैसे? हमें तो लगता है कि ज्यादा से ज्यादा थोड़े मोटे हो जाएंगे बस चलेगा, हमें कौन सा फिल्म स्टार या ओलंपिक खिलाड़ी बनना है। पर अगर तेल, नमक या चीनी पे कंट्रोल नहीं किया ना तो हाई ब्लड प्रेशर, हार्ट अटैक, स्ट्रोक, शुगर की बीमारी, आंखों की खराबी, किडनी फेल, कुछ भी हो सकता है। और इन सबके चक्कर में परहेज ही परहेज, सिर्फ खाने में नहीं, आपकी पूरी जिंदगी में, रोजमर्रा के हर काम में। नुकसान समझ लिए ना, बस हो गया काम आसान। अब लगाइए दिमाग को काम पे। अगर रोज के खाने में तेल का इस्तेमाल कम करना है तो जितना तेल अभी आप डालते हैं उससे धीरे धीरे कम कीजिए, और फिर कुछ दिनों बाद और थोड़ा कम। और अगर नमक कम करना है तो भी यही, खाना पकाते समय नमक की मात्रा आप धीरे धीरे कम करते जाइए, और ऊपर से सैलेड, दही या फल पे नमक मत छिड़किए। चाय में चीनी लेते हैं, यानी कोई नहीं, लीजिए लीजिए, बस आधा चम्मच कम कर दीजिए, और कुछ दिन बाद समझ गया ना। इसलिए सोचिए आपकी जिंदगी में हर दिन, हर पल कौन जीतता है। Start reducing your intake of sugar, salt and fat from today.